Greetings and welcome to the Data Armory. Today we are going to study about comments in Python. Many programmers always end up forgetting the code that they had written, or you find that they write code that is difficult for others to read. And that's why it is important for you to understand how to write Python comments, since you can find yourself in the same position whereby you forget what your code was supposed to do, or other people find it difficult to read your code. Or our study outline today is what is a comment in Python. We're also going to look at how to create a comment, the kinds and importance of comments in Python programming language. At the end of this, if you're someone who needs to understand how to write a comment in Python, or someone who needs to know why writing comments in Python are important, at the end of this study you should be able to know how to create comments, know why comments are important. That is our learning objective in our learning outcome in this study. So when talk about comments in Python, definitely we look at what a comment is, how to create a comment, and kinds of comment in Python. Now, what is the definition of a comment? A comment can be defined as human readable documentation. A comment in Python programming language can be defined as human readable documentation. When talk about comments in Python programming language, then a comment is written by beginning a line with the hash character. A comment is written in Python programming language by beginning the line with a hash character. For example, here in this code, this line of code here, these are line of code, these are comment in Python programming language. And you see, I've begun this line with the hash character. If I don't begin it with the hash character, it is not a comment. So any line that begins with the hash character is a comment in Python programming language. Then another important point to note is that anything that follows the hash character for the rest of the line is part of the comment. What you should highlight here is that anything that follows the hash character for the rest of the line is part of the comment. For example, here I want to print out the number of students, so I say number of students. So this is a comment, and anything else that will fall under this line, number of students in the data armory, number of students in data armory, this is a comment, a single line comment, because everything else that will fall in this line is part of the comment. And that's why we say single line comments. And single line comments are used before or next to the code. For example, here, student number, students, this variable holds the value 10. We have talked about variables before, so I believe you understand what variables are. So this variable holds the value 10. So if we want to comment what this line of code is going to do, we need to write the comment before the code. We need to write the comment before the code or besides the code. Let me remove this because we had used this as an example. Number of students, we can either write it before the code as we have written here, or we can write it besides the code. We can write here number of students at the data, number of students at the data armory. So let us print out this. Remember, we are using Jupyter notebooks. So number of students, we have printed out this value is 10. Another important thing to note is that a comment should not be long and should be easy to understand. Like if you look at a comment here, it is not long and it is easy to understand. And one of the good practices when writing comment is that a comment should not be more than 79 characters. Another important thing about comments is that a comment is not an executable code. A comment is not an executable code. You see, when you are running this cell, it only printed out this variable, but did not print out this comment, because a comment is not an executable code. Let us try here. We have said here, the comment here, remember how do we write a comment? We begin with the hash character. We have said comments are not executable. So this line will be ignored. Let us print out the data summary. You see, it has ignored this line. Assume it was not a comment. How do we make this line not to be a comment? By removing the hash character. Let us try to run that. To see the output, it says syntax error. Try to run this line and it could not run the line, and it gave us back an error. So a comment is not executable code. So if we put that here, because a comment is not executable code, if you run this, now it will run and it will ignore this line. It will not print out this line. But you have seen, if we remove the hash character, it will try to print it, but will bring back a syntax error. Another thing is that when you're writing comments in Python programming language, you should not put the hash character within a string. You should not put the hash character within a string. Let us write this again. Let us write this code to new students. We are welcoming new students to the data armory. We are welcoming new students to the data armory. We'll print out this. We are welcoming new students to the data armory. So we have said that we should not write it within a string. If we print out this, it will work just fine, and it will ignore this line because this line is a comment. But if you put this comment within a string, and the string here is this value here, let us see what will happen. Let us remove this. When we print it, you see it prints what you thought to be a comment, because a comment is not supposed to be within a string. It's supposed to be before the line of code or besides the line of code, because when you put it within a string, it will be read as part of the string. So it's not supposed to be within a string. When you're writing comments in Python programming language, the comment should be either before the line of code, or as we had given an example before, it should be besides the line of code. Should be besides the line of code. So here it should not be within a string. A comment should not be within a string. That's another important thing to note when you're talking about comments in Python programming language. It's also important to add a comment. When you talk about comments in Python programming language, it is important to add notes to your code within your programs, because this helps to define what your code is doing or explains sections of your code, and more so when your code is longer and complex. There are times whereby you'll write long and complex programs, and if you don't comment them, you'll find trouble remembering what your code was supposed to do or what a given section of your code was supposed to do. And that's why we say that it is important to add notes to your code and within your programs, because this helps to define what your code is doing or explains sections of your code, and more so when your code is longer and complex. Again, it is important when you forget what your code is about. Writing notes to your code and within your programs is important when you forget what your code is about, like when you used a function. For example, within your program, you had used a function and you did not add notes on what that function is supposed to do. Then you forget what that function was supposed to do. Then you see that it will interfere with your work process, and we'll learn about functions in our upcoming tutorials. Now again, meaningful comments will help others understand your code. When you get employed as a programmer, a good chunk of your time will be used to read other people's code. And those people that you collaborate with, or those people that you work with, will also be reading your code, or basically your code will also be read by other people most of the time. Assume that you are working in a company and you have left that company and you had written a program. Someone will come to replace you, will need to read your code if your code is still being used or if your program is still being used, and they'll need to understand your code. And if you are not documented, if you are not added comments to what your code is supposed to do, then they'll have a problem understanding what your code is about. That's why it's important to add notes to your code and within your programs. Another key thing to note is that as a professional programmer, you need meaningful code, considering that you will collaborate with others. This is like a repetition, but what we add here is that as a professional programmer, so if you want to be a professional programmer, then you should know how to write comments in Python programming language, because even professional programmers, they comment their code because it's easy to forget the code. Another thing that is important to note is that it is easy to delete comments than to go back and comment your code. Imagine you had written a complex code, now you want to go back and comment it, and you have forgotten some of the things that some of the sections of your code, and you had forgotten what some of the sections of your code were supposed to do. And that's why it's always important to comment or to add notes to your code as you go along. Now, commenting out, another important thing to note is that commenting out is when you put the hash character when trying to find out what is wrong in a program. When you put the hash character when trying to find out what is wrong in a program. For example, the variable x holds the value 10, the variable y holds the value 50, and the variable z holds the value 25. And we want to get the sum of this, and we want to get the sum of this. So we will say here x, you add y, and you add z. X, you add y, and you add z. So let us print this out. Let us see the output. The output is 85. Now remember, what were we trying to do? We are talking about commenting out. Assume that this one was a string, because these are integers and these are string data type. We have done this in our previous tutorials, and we want to get the total of this. It will bring us an error. There's a type error. It says unsupported operand types for integer and string. Remember, an integer cannot be concatenated to a string. And let's take, for example, you have found this error, and you had a long code, and you want to find out where the problem is with your code. You can come and comment out to see where the problem is. For example, I can come here and comment out this, and because a comment is not an executable code, if I comment out that and try to find where the problem is with my code, then you see it has given me an output that x plus y is equals to 60, which means the problem is not with x and the problem is not with y. So you see the importance of commenting out. I can comment out a line of code so that when I'm trying to find out what is wrong with my program, I can comment out a line of code when I'm trying to find out what is wrong with my program. So if now I know that x is not the problem and y variable is not the problem, so the problem is with z. So I'll come and find out what the problem is. Z is a string. Is either I convert it into an integer or I remove the opening and closing bracket so that it becomes an integer. We are done about data types and how to concatenate data types in our previous tutorials. You can go and confirm. So that is the important thing to note. Now, another important thing to note about comments is that in Python programming language, we don't have multi-line comments. In Python programming language, we don't have multi-line comments. If you compare with other languages, in other languages, you can write a multi-line comment. For example, in other languages, you can use this, I believe, to write multi-line comments. Another language you can use this to write multi-line comments, but Python does not support multi-line comments. Python does not support multi-line comments. Remember, this is just an example of how multi-line comments are written in other languages, but in Python that is not possible. Let us try and have multi-line comments. So these are comment. We begin with the hash character. Let's try to run this line. Have you noted where the problem is? Is that we had said that anything that is after the hash character is a comment. But remember, this one is this line is not in the same line whereby we had the comment. So it will bring us a name error. Comments is not defined. So if we wanted this to print out, we ought to have put them in one line. Now if we print, it will ignore that and it will not bring us back an error. So in Python programming language, there is no multi-line comments, but there is a workaround, or in a simple language you can say that there is a hack. What do you do when you want to write multiple line comments? You write several comments in different lines, but begin every line with the hash character. That is the workaround when you want to write multi-line comments, is that you'll write several lines, but every line you begin with the hash character. That is the workaround. For example, here we want to get the sum of these variables. This should be total, because sum is a keyword, and we had done this, that there are some when we are choosing variable names, we should not use keywords. So here is we are writing a comment here. We just remove this. So plus w. So what are we doing with this code? Is that we are getting the sum of variables. What are the variables? Y, X, and W. Then we'll use a different variable to print out the totals. What is the different variable that we'll use to print out the totals? It is this variable total. So we'll use this total to print out the variable. So let us run this line of code. So what are we doing here? We are writing a multi-line comment, whereby we have written the first comment, getting the sum of the variables. We have moved to another line and we have begun again with the hash character. So this is how we write multi-line comments in Python. Why do we write them like this? Because Python programming language does not support multi-line comments, unlike other languages like JavaScript, C++, and many other languages out there that support multi-line comments. Now, another thing to note when you're talking about comments in Python is that blank lines after the comment are also ignored. Blank lines after the comment are also ignored. We should change this. Now, we had talked about this, but there is another third point that we need to add here. We had said that when you are different ways to write comments are before the line of code, next to the line of code, or as a comment block or multi-line comment. Now, we had said that in Python, there are no multi-line comments. It does not support multi-line comments. And one workaround we have said is beginning each and every line with the hash character. But another workaround that can help us to add comments in our Python code is using what we call multi-line strings, and we'll handle this when we get to strings and also when we get to functions. Now, multi-line strings. Now, a multi-line string, it is a string that is within triple quotation marks. So let us give an example of a multi-line string. To write a multi-line string, we'll use triple quotation marks. So we'll say, welcome to the data armory for So this is how we write a multiline string. Now we have the multiline string. This says welcome to Data Armory for Python and data science, and we want to print a word here. Let us print welcoming message. Let us print this word. So you see, it prints the string. It has printed the string, but it has not printed this. So this is one way that you can use to comment your code if there's something you're going to do. Like here, example, we are printing the welcoming message, and I want to note what the welcoming message is. I can comment here that the welcoming message is welcome to Data Armory for Python and data science tutorials, and it will be ignored. But remember one thing. Remember to put your comments below or above the triple quoted text or the multiline comments or block string, which is a valid Python code. And that's the difference that I wanted us to know, that the multiline string is a valid Python code, code. For example, if we assign this to a variable, and say welcome message, if we assign this to a variable, it will be printed out. We'll get an output. Let us see. We have assigned that to a variable. Let us see if we'll get an output. We have assigned that to a variable. Let us see if we'll get an output. So we print this welcome message. You see, we get an output. Why? Because a multiline string is a valid Python code. Remember to put your comments below or above the triple quoted text. Another thing when you're working with a multiline string is that you should always remember to put your comments below or above the triple quoted text. Don't forget to leave your comment in the comment section below. Don't also forget to like, share, and subscribe. Remember to check out our Python tutorials playlist for other Python language tutorials. You have a blessed day.